All right, breaking back in for severe weather coverage. I mentioned that the severe thunderstorm warning over Wakulla County. Well, now we've seen a piece of that storm tighten up and rotate, and so the National Weather Service has issued a tornado warning for this cell over Wakulla County. Now, this is not too far to the west of Crawfordville. So, folks in central Wakulla County, from Wakulla Springs to Crawfordville, you begin to that place of safety. It doesn't have as classic of a look on what we call reflectivity, but on what's called the storm relative velocity, absolutely, we're seeing that couplet, the red and green, and it has definitely come together a lot in the last 5 minutes or so. So the area just to the west of Crawfordville and moving off toward the, we'll say east-northeast. So not moving directly toward downtown Crawfordville, but likely just to the north. But again, we're talking toward Wakulla Springs, or perhaps maybe just south of Wakulla Springs, probably a little bit more, say east-northeast. Regardless, all the communities from Crawfordville up to the Leon County line are under this tornado warning. So we're talking about from roughly Riverside Elementary School and point south down to Crawfordville, this tornado warning is in effect. Let's get in closer on the storm relative velocities here, and let's take the projection off of there, Austin. Yeah, let's get a little bit closer, and I'll have to take the warning off so we can query the intensity of this with the winds. But again, it's not a super strong. In fact, this particular one is a little bit weaker. It does show some winds of 39 miles per hour. Let's get in close right here and query these little pixels right toward the center and see if there's anything that's stronger than 39 miles per hour. So let's query these if we can. Yeah, up to 41. What I don't see here is a strong gate-to-gate shear. So while there is this toward and away type of movement within this, we're not seeing a super strong gate-to-gate shear. So it's a relatively weak rotation at the level that we're looking at. But regardless, it is moving off toward the, we'll say, even more northeast. When you look at this motion, and this is just over the last half hour, it's definitely a little more this way. So staying just to the north of Crawfordville, but that probably only puts it a few minutes away from getting to Highway 319. And this time of day, likely a lot of folks driving maybe out of Tallahassee down to Crawfordville need to be made aware of this. So yeah, if you're the only one that's on that commute home, if you're in Crawfordville and you're headed north, let's just wait about a half hour till this moves on by. This warning is in effect until 6:45, but that's if it holds together and reaches all the way out here to the eastern parts of the county. Just based on that trend of looking at the velocities over the last few minutes, it looks as though hopefully it's already started to weaken and won't cycle back up. Good news in that we're not seeing any of that debris signature. Well, this is that correlation coefficient where it's looking for something that's a non-meteorological target. And unfortunately, we've seen what a lot of this looks like over the last week. And also, not seeing much in the way of a hail issue. So that's good news in that we can eliminate some of these other problems, but there's definitely still this circulation. So if you're just joining us, tornado warning mainly for the central parts of Wakulla County, probably staying just to the north of Crawfordville, but you are within that tornado warning. So get to that safe place just to play it safe. There's also a severe thunderstorm warning for some damaging wind gusts, a possibility. But the area from Crawfordville up to Wakulla Springs, likely staying south of Woodville, but well, again, we'll track this over the next half hour and see what comes together. Did see a little more lightning starting to come together down toward Crawfordville, but here's your circulation. The red and green, that's what we call that couplet, and is moving off toward the northeast at about 20 miles per hour. So that would take it near Ivan by the time we get to 624. Whidden Lake Church, 622. Riverside Elementary, 629. Wakulla Springs, a little bit beyond that, 634. Again, these are just estimates based on it holding together and moving at this speed off toward the, we'll say, east-northeast at about 20 miles per hour. If you are in Tallahassee, this is likely going to stay well to your south. If it holds together long enough, again, it potentially could get into southeastern parts of Leon County, but it's really not a typical setup for these types of cells to last as long as what we saw with many of those storms last week. There is a good amount of wind energy coming in behind this. Initially, it was just a lot of wind coming through parts of Calhoun and Liberty counties, and then enough of it kind of pushed into it. And what I suspect is there was enough of a little bit of a sea breeze type of interaction because some of the coastal areas hadn't seen any rainfall in a while, and so it was a little bit warmer, and that enabled a little more instability to develop with this cell. But the tornado warning is still active. Let's go in and we'll look back at the storm relative velocities. When we say storm relative, what that does is it takes the forward motion of the storm and it kind of subtracts it out, subtracts that forward speed out so that you get just a better idea of what the rotation is within that storm. This is just over the last half hour. Right there is when it came together, and it looks as though they've already, the Weather Service has clipped off some of that tornado warning. It's obviously not going to back up to the west, but that center of circulation, it's still there, but it's a little more on the broad side. I don't see it as with as tight of a couplet. That bright green that we saw just a few minutes ago when the warning was first issued, it's not showing up now. There is still the definite green and red put together. The red, this is coming from the Tallahassee radar. The red is the wind that's blowing away from the radar, whereas the green is the wind that's blowing toward the radar. So that's why it's, there's a circulation because you've got that green and red side by side. But if you see the colors like this toward the radar and the colors like this away from the radar, that's when it's real strong. Really not seeing something that's super strong. So it was definitely there for a short time. We did not see a debris signature, so even though it flared up, let's check the correlation coefficient if we can. Again, Austin, who's driving the radar. I would like to see if perhaps there was any debris that might have been picked up over the Apalachicola National Forest out here when it first tightened up. Really not seeing anything, so that's good news. This is very likely a thunderstorm that's rotating with a tight enough rotation to kind of basically set off the alarm bells for the radar to let you know that, hey, this is something that's rotating and it could reach the surface. So this is what we call radar indicated as opposed to radar confirmed. If we see debris, that's when we know there's actually been a touchdown. If we're not seeing the debris, it doesn't mean that it hasn't touched down. It could be over a pasture or it's just not lofting much stuff up into the air or maybe not seen yet. But as of right now, it's just radar indicated and not radar confirmed. So this is the tornado warning. It's only for Wakulla County. Let's widen out a little bit more because there are a couple other things. While we're talking about this, I want to mention that we are still talking about some really heavy rainfall coming through the area. Non-severe storms, but still could be some flooding moving out of Decatur into Grady counties. And we've got some heavy rain moving through Tallahassee. Also, down toward the coast, we're starting to see some of the heavy rainfall lining up along coastal Franklin and Wakulla counties. In the last 12 hours, we talked earlier about the foot of rain that fell over southern Early County. The earlier 3 to 6 inches of rain across parts of Tallahassee, it's getting another shot, and now we're starting to see some of that heavy rain extend into parts of Wakulla County too. So while we're tracking that possibility for a tornado into Wakulla County, there's a flood watch that's in effect, and that could cause many problems too. We're talking about turn around, don't drown. Yeah, this is one of those times where if it's a flooded, especially if it's a secondary road, you don't know if it's been washed out underneath that. So there are no flash flood warnings in effect. The earlier one up through parts of Early and Seminole counties, that's no longer in effect. But the main threat right now is this tornado warning. So let's get back to that. And when I get a good feeling that this is no longer a threat, then we'll get back into our newscast. But our policy is when there's an active tornado warning, we stay with it until either it expires or we're pretty convinced that it's no longer an issue. I'm trending toward this is going to expire early just because of this, where there's still a rotation there. I think this is just north of Crawfordville. Circulation itself going to be passing between 267 and Crawfordville. So the area here just to the west of 319, that's where we've got the circulation. But it's there, but it's not super tight. It was, which is what started the warning to begin with, back here. And that's when the warning was first issued. That's back to 610. But since then, it has continued to move off toward the northeast. 12 minutes later, It's definitely a weaker circulation, getting closer to 319. I'll stay with it for another minute or two just to see if this, I'm going to wait for another scan. If the weakening trend continues, then we'll finish up the newscast, and Austin and I will just watch this very, very closely. I don't want to bail out on this and then see the next scan come in and see it tightening up. Regardless of whether or not I think it's going to completely fall apart, play it safe for now for at least a few more minutes if you're north of Crawfordville and up near Wakulla Springs. Again, it's not likely a tornado at this point, but it is still possible just because there definitely was that brief strong circulation which has since weakened as it moves off toward the northeast. Based on that forward speed of about 20 miles per hour, still we're talking about crossing over 319 in the next few minutes. That's near the community of Ivan. We're talking about near Wakulla Springs by 6:37, River Springs Middle School about 6:34. And if it were to continue on as we get to about 6:50, that would be near Vereen. The actual warning expires at 6:45. If this indication, this trend that we've seen during the last 5 minutes continues, then I think we can safely say that this is not as much of a tornado threat. It still could have some damaging winds, and you could still get some gusts. There's still a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for this cell, maybe for some wind gusts in excess of 40 or 50 miles per hour as it moves off toward the east. But there'll be some heavy rain, there'll be some lightning. It actually looks like some of that. Let's check the hail, because I've noticed some of that reflectivity has kind of bumped up a little bit. It's a possibility there could be some small hail with this, but yeah, I'm not seeing much there. The reflectivity kind of bounced up a little bit there, so that could just be because of this tropical rain, really, really heavy stuff. That could cause, obviously, some flooding of some secondary roads. I'm talking about that area of heavy rain just to the south of Woodville. That's pretty close to Wakulla Springs. Let's check this one more time. If a new scan is in on, oh, there we go. This is what we call a cross section. It's poking way up. This storm goes well above 40,000 feet, but we're not seeing the super high intensities once you get up to that freezing level. So when you see those real high intensities, when you get up at 20, 30,000 feet, that's when there's a good indication perhaps of some hail with that. Looks like this circulation, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to keep a close eye on this since it is going to be crossing over 319 shortly, but I don't believe this is a tight enough rotation to where it should be a major concern. We're still going to watch it very closely. Don't get me wrong. I did want to allow the rest of the newscast to continue, but Austin and I will look in and we'll climb into more specific details on this, and if I see anything that indicates that it is still a dangerous threat, then we'll cut right back in the program. But for now, we'll take a quick break and we'll come right back.